Hello, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Critical Media Literacy Unit. Hello, hello. All right, yes, if you can please drop into the chat where you are coming from. And if you don't mind sharing what subject you teach as well, I would love to see the different subject matters that are represented here. Okay, French and Theater, Indiana, ELA, Latin in Montgomery, nice. Instructional coach, Louisiana, science, fantastic. ELA, Spanish, nice. I love seeing the different subject matters represented. ELA 10 and 12, nice, very cool. All right, guys, let's keep those coming and I will go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. Just to start off a little bit about myself. So if you were here earlier in the day, you may have met me in the Welcome and What's New session. So my name is Araz. I am the Teacher Education Manager here at Quizlet. And I actually recently joined the team here after 17 years of teaching middle school and high school English in California. I got really serious about critical media literacy about 10 years ago when I was doing my master's program at UCLA, and I took a class with Dr. Jeff Scher, who was a thought leader in the space. And then we went on to work with LAUSD, the Los Angeles Unified School District, which is the second largest school district in the nation, to implement critical media literacy into their curriculum, starting from kindergarten all the way through high school. And over the years, it has really become a passion of mine, and I'm so excited to share it with you today. Um, we know now more than ever that students are really overloaded and overwhelmed with the media and content that's always coming their way. And the goal of critical media literacy is to give them the tools that they need to unpack and understand that content and those messages. This includes news media, entertainment, social media, even things that they're given to read in class, like books, articles, magazines, historical documents, textbooks. This really applies to everything, every kind of content that they consume. Um, it I'll talk more about the foundations and the applications of critical media literacy in a moment, but actually before we get started, I would like to do a little exercise. So I'm going to give you guys some classwork, okay? So if you can open up a note or a document. And I'm going to have you just jot down just a short description of your morning routine, okay? So you're just going to take a couple of minutes to describe a typical morning, okay? So again, just a note or a doc will be fine. Okay? But there is a catch before you start typing, okay? You may not use the letters T, C, E, L, or O, okay? But you know your routine pretty well, so this shouldn't be, that difficult. It's something that you do every day. So take a moment and try to describe your morning. Just don't use these letters. So think about it for a bit. So you may want to talk about feeding your cat or having a cup of coffee in the morning, and that's fine. But you have to find different ways to describe those things without using these letters. So you can't use the word coffee, can't use the word tea, can't use the word cat, um, can't use the word dog. Okay? So think about, alternative words and take a couple of minutes here. So you'll notice that this does get a little harder as it goes. Initially, it doesn't seem that difficult, but as you try to write more and more words, you realize that your options are very limited. Oh, I like what I'm seeing in the chat here. Nice. Yeah, so very concise, very short answers. Nice. Okay. So at this point, you may be changing your morning routine and shortening things a bit, like maybe today you skip your coffee and maybe today you don't feed your dog, just so you can meet these requirements. So I'm not going to make you struggle through this for that much longer. I have another task for you. Okay. So now I want you to mentally storyboard that same routine. Okay, you don't have to draw anything, but just make a mental, like little movie or mental storyboard of that same routine. But this time you cannot include an image of a mug, a pet, a bed, a shoe, or a toothbrush. And so again, you're going to think about it and start finding alternative ways to convey your message. I'll give you a moment to think here. Right. So if you want to communicate that you drink coffee and you can't show a mug, here maybe you can show a coffee maker or a bag of ground coffee, or if you're a teacher on summer break, some coffee beans and a grinder since you have time in the morning. Okay. You can't show your pet, but maybe you can show like a hand setting down a food bowl with your pet's name on it. So find those alternative images. This time you can use all the letters. You're just not using these images. So all the letters are fair game. All right, so this should be a little easier because over the course of our lifetimes, we built such a large bank of images in our minds that we associate with different things, that we essentially have this very robust language that we can pull from. And regardless of how strong our language skills are and our command of the languages, our ability to understand and communicate through visuals is much stronger. Okay. So what's the point of all this? Why am I talking about images in a session about literacy? So Common Core states that literacy is not limited to the written word, okay? It extends to photos, images, videos, film, and digital multimedia. And as teachers, it's our responsibility to equip students with the skills that they need to navigate and challenge media influences responsibly. So where does critical media literacy come in? Why teach it? Okay. So the goal of critical media literacy is to empower students to become critical thinkers and informed consumers of media. And ideally, we want them to go on to be responsible creators of media. And that's one of the components that I will touch on later. So it's really finding that balance between them being consumers of media and them being the creators of media as well. So how do we do this? Okay. We do this by teaching them to analyze media messages and identify biases and accept that everyone has biases. Okay. We teach them to evaluate the credibility of sources. We teach them to recognize stereotypes and power structures. We teach them to understand that we teach them to understand that media is a production and that there are processes in place. We teach them to create ethical and effective media content and engage critically with media and continually ask questions as they consume different types of media. And again, it can be social media, entertainment, news, class materials, curriculum. This is one of those things where you open this door, be ready for your students to ask a lot of questions. So like I said, I taught English for years. And once we started talking about critical media literacy and I shared the pillars with them and laid the foundation, every book we read, the questions that would come up were so different than the questions that I would receive before. They would start to really question the context and understand why would the author write this? Why would the author portray this character in this certain way? So it really is a door that you open and you need to be ready to engage with your students in a different way and allow them the space to ask these questions. All right, so to start off, I'm going to go through the 6 pillars that all of this is based on. So I'll go over the pillar and then the questions that you can use to frame your teaching. And bear with me, this first part is a little text heavy. I'll go over the examples later in context. I don't show the examples with the pillars because they're not standalone pillars. So they all come together and you'll see that in the examples later. So again, just bear with me for these 6 pillars. It's a little text heavy and then we'll get into the fun stuff. Okay? All right, so pillar number 1 is social constructivism. Okay? So students need to understand that all information is constructed by individuals and or groups of people who make choices within social contexts. Okay? So we ask, who are all the possible people who made choices that helped create this text or this media? So when we present them with a piece of content, regardless of the medium, we ask them, who are all the potential people who created this? Is the creator a novelist, an artist, a musician, a politician? And then we ask, okay, who else helped create this piece of work? Okay. So for example, if it's a musician, there is potentially a songwriter, a producer, a record label. If there's a music video, it brings in a whole other team. With, public figures, there are often publicists and stylists and a glam team and so forth. So they start to understand that this image that they see is a constructed image, okay? And this is the type of media that they're consuming. Okay? So then we go on and talk about the context of the person and the people involved, okay? So what are their experiences, their upbringing? What are their views? And how does all of this, how does their context impact the content that they create? So it's really about placing everything in a larger social construct to understand where this is coming from. All right. Pillar number 2 is languages and semiotics. So each medium has its own language with tools and semantics. So we ask, how was this text constructed and delivered / accessed? Okay. So asking students, is this content really text heavy? Okay. Do you have to be an advanced reader to comprehend this material, or can everyone access it? Is it really image heavy? Okay. What types of images are there? Are they symbols that you have to be familiar with in order to understand this, or are they just pictures and photographs that anyone can comprehend? Okay. Does the consumer have to go looking for this content, or does it come to them? So I used to use the example of like books and magazines, where you had to go out and seek that content. Like you had to go and like, to the library or to a bookstore and like purchase a book or a magazine, and you go out and as a consumer and seek that content. But realistically, that's not the way that most students consume content anymore. So we talk about, websites, social media, billboards are like a good one to talk about, because we wanted to differentiate messages that they seek out versus messages that come to them. And then here we also have the conversation around, well, it's maybe a message that came to you via a commercial, but what channel were you on that allowed that commercial to come through? Would that same commercial come through had you been on a different channel or on a different person's social media page or whatever it may be? So it's really understanding that dynamic of how messages come to us, okay? And unpacking the language within it. All right, pillar number 3 is audience and positionality. Okay, so individuals and groups understand media messages similarly and or differently depending on multiple contextual factors. So again, it's all about putting it into context. So we ask, how could this piece of media or text be understood differently by different audiences? Okay. And this is a really interesting one, especially when teaching English language arts. We talk about different perspectives and different interpretations. Okay. So here it's important for students to understand that everyone has their own biases and we have to accept those biases. Everyone has their own experiences and their own perspectives, and all of those help to shape how we consume media and how we understand media. And that the same piece of information, the same piece of content can mean very different things to different groups of people. All right, we're halfway through the pillar, so again, bear with me. I know I'm doing a lot of talking and a lot of text here. All right, pillar number 4 is the politics of representation. So media messages and medium through which they travel always has a bias. We talked a bit about this. And they're designed to support or challenge dominant hierarchies of power, privilege, and pleasure. So here it's really getting students to understand what values, viewpoints, and ideologies are being represented and which ones are missing from a certain text or piece of content. And being aware that the information that is left out of pieces of content is just as important as the information that is included. Okay? So students really need to be able to ask questions of, well, why isn't this piece included? What about this perspective? So understanding that things are included on purpose and things are left out on purpose. And what you see is not the entire story. It's not the entire package because certain perspectives are left out. All right, pillar number 5 is production and institutions. So all media texts have a purpose, and they're often commercial or governmental, and it's shaped by the creators and or systems in which they operate. Okay? And I think this is the most important one, and it's the easiest one for students to wrap their minds around. It's asking why this piece of media was created. So students have to understand that it takes time, it takes effort, it takes money to create a piece of content. And every piece of content that they consume has these things behind it. Okay? So they have to take a moment and ask themselves, like, why? Why would someone spend time, money, effort into creating this? What is the purpose of it? Is it to sell me something? Is it to convince me of something? Is it to teach me something? Why do they want to teach me this something? What is the purpose behind it? Okay, what is the point of taking the time to create this piece of content? Okay, and again, it can be any type of content. It can be art, it can be news, it can be literature. Okay, you can always ask why. Okay? Right? And then pillar number 6 is social and environmental justice. So media culture is a terrain of struggle that perpetuates or challenges positive and or negative ideas about groups, people, issues. The key here is for students to understand that messages are not neutral, okay? And they advantage or disadvantage certain groups, certain ideologies, certain perspectives. And so understanding again that they constantly need to ask questions of who is included, who is left out, why is this piece of media created, and for pillar 6, who does it advantage, who does it disadvantage. Okay? So now that we've gone over the pillars, we can jump into the fun stuff. Okay? So this is how I teach. This is how I start my critical media literacy lessons. We all know the story of the 3 little pigs and the big bad wolf. You know, little pig, let me in, not by the hairs of my chinny chin chin. This book takes that story and it flips it and it tells it from a different perspective. And this is one of my favorite lessons to do at the beginning because I have all of my students sit down and I would have high school students sit in a circle and we would do story time, like back when they were in elementary school and they loved it. And I would read the book to them and the book goes through the story again and it flips it and it tells it from the perspective of the wolf. Okay, so here we have the story of Alexander T. Wolf, A. Wolf, okay? And A. Wolf was just baking a cake for his dear old granny's birthday, and he needed a cup of sugar. And unfortunately, this poor wolf was just a little under the weather and he was sneezing. So you can see where this is going. Okay? So A Wolf goes to the first pig's house and he asks for sugar, but he sneezes and the house falls apart. You know, really, it's not his fault that this whole house was made out of straw. Okay? And in the middle of all this rubble is a dead little pig, and he's a wolf and he doesn't want to waste food, and and he looks at the pig and he's like, well, it's already dead as a doornail, so it would be a shame if I didn't go ahead and eat it. He's already dead. Okay? And here he actually stops and he talks about how this isn't all that different from us eating hamburgers, except hamburgers aren't cute little animals with curly tails. Okay? A wolf then goes to the second pig's house, okay? And he asks for, a cup of sugar to bake his granny a cake. Again, he sneezes, house falls apart, same thing. Dead pig in the center of the rubble, and he goes ahead and eats the second pig, even though this time he wasn't really hungry. That wasn't his intention. He was already full at this point. Okay? So then he goes to the third pig's house, and this third pig actually is not very nice to him, and he even insults his dear old granny. And because a wolf is just such a gentle soul and he loves his granny so much, he gets a little worked up about these insults that are hurled at his grandmother. And he starts to pound on the door and he starts to get, really angry and worked up. And then he has a sneeze attack at the same time. And so he's pounding on the door and he's sneezing and, it turns into huffing and puffing. And again, you know how that story goes. So this third pig calls the police and some reporters end up showing up with the police and they snap a few photos of him while he's huffing and puffing. And then they find out that he actually ate the two other pigs and they craft this persona of the big bad wolf without ever really hearing his side of the story. And so that's how the story goes, just so students can see it from a different perspective. So aside from the text, we also take some time here to look at the images. Okay? So if you look at the pictures, you see that the wolf is very timid looking. He's wearing glasses. He has this, confused expression on his face. He's not threatening. Okay? In contrast to the pig in the picture, who has this, pretty a pretty intimidating expression on his face. You can see the shadows are darker. You can see his eyes are really prominent. And you can see that the pig is kind of looking down at the wolf and the wolf is looking up. So we talk about all the different ways that images, how artists and photographers can use different shadows, different angles to manipulate these images and to manipulate our understanding of things. So let's go on to the next one here. So this is the way I started off. And then like I said, we just talk a little bit about perspective so they can understand multiple perspectives and how the same thing can be interpreted from different sides. Okay. And then after that, we talk a little bit about believing what we see. And I show them this video of the Great Spaghetti Harvest. And I'm just going to play a short clip for you. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but you can find it on YouTube. Oops.
The flavor and makes it difficult for him to obtain top prices in world markets. But now these dangers are over and the spaghetti harvest goes forward. Spaghetti cultivation here in Switzerland is not, of course, carried out on anything like the tremendous scale.
Okay, so this video goes on to show this spaghetti harvest that takes place in Switzerland every year. And this was actually an April Fool's prank played by the BBC in 1957. And it's really interesting to see how students perceive it over 60 years later. So I play the video and I watch the confusion on their faces. And then as soon as I stop the video, the hands pop up, okay? And they ask questions like, is this really where pasta comes from? And they know that it's not true, okay? Like they're old enough to understand that, cooked pasta does not grow on trees in Switzerland, but it really does confuse them, and it's not as simple as seeing is believing. It's because the subject or the content is presented in a specific way, and we talk about the specific way that content is presented. So I ask them, why did you even for a split second think that this may be real, even though your logical self knows that this is not the way that spaghetti grows or pasta grows, okay? And so I asked them why they think this, and I get the same responses year after year. One of them being that it looks old. So the video looks old, it's in black and white, and so automatically they feel like it's vetted, okay? They feel like there's an innocence to things from the past. Okay? Another one I hear all the time is that the guy sounds smart. He has a British accent, and if you live in the US, that goes a pretty long way, especially with students. So we go through and I ask them to unpack their own biases and really start to identify what triggers their mind into believing certain things and accepting certain things. Okay. All right. After they've been introduced to this idea of critical media literacy, we go into a series of assignments, and then the pillars start to get embedded into our lessons. We do a villain or hero poster or a positive or negative impact poster, depending on the subject. So in English, we look at literary characters. In history, we look at historical figures or political figures. You can imagine the conversations that sparks. Science looks at different theories. Math looks at different statistics and reports. And the main thing is that each group has the same character or person or theory or whatever it may be. And it's their job to take that information and portray that. I'll go with character for my subject matter, portray that character as a hero, and then also portray that character as a villain. Okay. So we start off, we talk about Robin Hood and how he can be looked at as a hero versus a villain. We talk about Frankenstein, and this goes into like who is the real monster conversation. Is it Dr. Frankenstein or is it the monster? And who is the real villain here? Okay. So again, it's really about them understanding that different things are understood. There could be multiple perspectives and they can be understood in different ways. Another assignment that we would do is good photo, bad photo. So we look at pictures of celebrities, historical figures, again, political figures, and students have to find pictures where these people look like kind and personable versus pictures where they look really intimidating. Okay. And we talk about different angles and shadows and colors. We find like a random celebrity. I usually have them pick a name out of a hat, and then they look for pictures that depict them in different ways. For example, Arnold Schwarzenegger is always a really fun one, and they get a kick out of that one, where you see pictures of him in his bodybuilding action movie days versus him as a politician, and the way that he's portrayed differently, even though it's the same person, and the way that color is used, the way that angles are used, the way that lighting is used to convey this image. Okay. And then once they have a solid understanding of that, they have to do their own project where they take those same tools and take pictures in small groups of a subject. And you'll see, one of the pictures, the boy he looks a lot younger. He looks innocent. The picture's taken from the top. It's brightly lit. He's wearing colors. Whereas the second one, it's taken from the top up. There's shadow cast on his face. He has a hoodie on. And so again, it's really about understanding how pictures can really portray a certain image, even though if it's the same person. All right. This one is another really fun one that we would do. And this one was used in math as well. And I'm sorry if you can't see the pictures here. I think they may be a little small, but they should be linked in your resources. Let's see here. Sorry, I lost my screen here for a second. What happened here? Oh, you guys still see my screen? I don't know what I clicked and I lost my screen here. Okay, they are in the resources. You can't see my screen. Okay, good. There we go. I got my screen back. Okay. So you can zoom in and read these. And these are student examples. These are from a while ago. You'll see that these are from 2014. But we would give students, just some general facts, and their job was to go in and start twisting these facts. So one of them, they were supposed to like portray pickles in a really ugly light. The other one was bread. And this really teaches them that facts and figures are not as straightforward as we'd like to think they are. And it's not, and we can tell them this as much as we'd like, but it's not until they actually put it in practice where they see how easy it is to manipulate information. So you'll see like on the pickle one, there's a statistic in there like 98% of convicted felons are pickle eaters, okay? For the bread one, half of all children who grow up in bread consuming households score below average on standardized tests. More than 90% of violent crimes are committed within 24 hours of eating bread. Okay? So again, these are student examples. They're pretty old, and if you read through them, you can see, they're somewhat rough. There are like some spelling and grammatical errors in there, but it's really about allowing them to take it and make it their own. And the fun thing is now with AI, you can also have them prompt AI to create different images. You can have them prompt AI to manipulate the information and tell it to them in a different voice or from a different perspective. So this is an assignment that can really be updated, with all of the new features that are coming out. All right. Another one that we do that's really fun is writing an article from the perspective of different news sources. So we would give them, like again, for English, I would give them a event from a story, and they would have to report on the event from different news outlets. So like, what would the nightly news say about this? What would a tabloid say about this? And how would they construct it? A conservative news outlet, a liberal news outlet, an international news outlet. And then later we'd actually go on and they would film these news reports as well. And again, the purpose here is to get them to understand how easy it is to manipulate and construct media and messages. Okay? Here's another fun one that we would do. These were character product endorsements. This was from The Outsiders. So we would talk about the different characters and, if they were being paid, what types of products would it be believable for them to endorse. So this is for Pony Boy. If you've read the book, if you're familiar with it, you know that he's a big reader in the book. So maybe if it were current day, he would be a good poster child or spokesperson for a Kindle. Have some like, hair product, some all stars. And then this one was an interesting one. A student had come up with this. Like they said that he would be a good spokesperson for like some sort of community center or some sort of youth center. So again, it's really interesting to see how they take this information and they run with it and they get really creative with what they can do once they have that foundation set. Okay. All right. So if you take anything away from this presentation, I know there's a lot, but it's really teaching them that it's all about perspective, okay? Asking whose point of view is a certain message coming from? How does the creator want to portray the subject? Can that same subject be viewed differently under different circumstances? And then how does the creator employ ethos, logos, and pathos to convey their message? Are they using credibility? Are they using logic? Are they trying to appeal to your emotion? And this is a great place to plug in the ethos, pathos, logos conversation as well. If you would like to get started with critical media literacy, I also have a Quizlet set that you can scan, or you can just search my name and it will take you to the flashcard set. And then I'll do a quick demo of some of the things that you can do in Quizlet just with the foundation there. So let me stop sharing here. And all right, so if you scan the QR code, it will take you here to the Critical Media Literacy Overview flashcards. And the flashcards have the pillars on them. Some of the newer features, so if you're looking at this as a flashcard, if you're not quite sure, you can click this little light bulb, and it will give you a hint without giving the answer away. And then if you flip it and you still don't quite understand it, you can click on the explain this icon, and then it will give you, an AI generated explanation. So you can go through the different pillars. And then once you've gone through just the flashcards and studied them a bit, you can go into learn mode here. And this will help really solidify those, and this is something your students can do as well. So it will ask you different questions. So let's see, empower students to become critical thinkers and informed media consumers by analyzing media messages, evaluating sources and credibility, recognizing stereotypes and power structures, and so forth. So I know all of this together is media literacy, but you'll see that these distractors are actually pretty good. So it really does engage the students and force them to think about what they're reading. And it's not just a quick answer here. So I know that's critical media literacy. I'll go on. Theory stating that all information is constructed by individuals or groups within social contexts. So let's say I'm still not quite sure with this one. I may have gotten it confused with something I learned in sociology. I'm going to click behaviorism here. Okay. And it tells me in a really nice, affirming way, no sweat, I'm still learning. Okay. And I can continue and go on with learn mode here. Once I've worked my way through learn mode, I can also use test mode, which is fun. And I have these options to toggle. So I can use true and false, multiple questions, multiple choice, matching, and written. So I'm just going to leave it as is and start the test. Okay. And here I can actually print this test, which is really nice. And I can use this as something that I can share with my students. So again, the set is available for you in Quizlet if you would like to get started with your class. And let's see, let me go ahead and go back to my other screen. And if you have any questions about this, you can email the Quizlet Unconference email, which is unconference_2024 at Quizlet. Did I say that right? Unconference_2024 at Quizlet.com. Yes. And I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you so much. We ended a little bit early, so you'll get a little breather in between your two sessions, but we will see you in one of our later sessions. All right. Bye, everyone.